I think if there's a message, then the message is that people should learn to see things a little bit different than they think they are. I think that's kind of a general thing that good art has to provide. The work that we produced together with the Museum of Contemporary Art here in Busan I think is a work about perspective. It's about changing views on things. It's about changing ideas that exist and experience things in a way that you have not, maybe not really understood before. So the whole thing is a big sculpture, but it's not only a sculpture from outside, it's a sculpture. From inside is a sculpture that is an exhibition space. From inside it's a sculpture that's a coffee bar. In the sculpture that is an exhibition space are other sculptures. And these sculptures, you could go inside and experience how it is to be looked at when you are a sculptor. Because when you are inside these sculptures, there's little holes where you can look outside. And when people stand in front of you or stand in front of the sculpture and look at the sculpture, you maybe get a little bit of a feeling of how that is. If you get stared on, if you get looked at. And I mean, without necessarily knowing that a sculpture has feelings, if it would have, then they would be a little bit like you feel when you're in the sculpture and look outside. One of the artwork I already explained. The other artworks are wall paintings that function with a special typography I developed. And each wall carries a question that you can actually read when you understand how the typography works. But the idea is that in the first moment when you come in and you don't understand immediately that it is typography, that it looks like it's just a colorful pattern. And again, like in the other work, maybe you suddenly understand that what you understand in the first moment is not necessarily what is there to be understood. And that if you care, if you think, if you look closely, things appear in a different way that you think they have appeared before. You know, since we are in Korea, it's not so far-fetched idea to make something in Korean language. The sentence of the one big neon sign in the sculpture, inside the sculpture, says something like "Welcome to the lower part of heaven," and again, it's about direction and perspective and how do you look at something. You know, like in a way, it's meant to be a bit humorous. You know, like because if we talk about something like heaven, it's always something which is up there, and we never think that even there's a top and a bottom and a left and a right. So lower part of heaven is something you normally don't use as an expression, which has to do with the idea of how do you look at things, you know, and it's also a bit also carries a bit the idea that if you say here lower part, you are in the lower part of heaven, that where we are can be already part of heaven. I'm not sure if it's the core of my work, but it's certainly something that appears quite often, not always, but quite often. There's two things about it. One is that I like this idea, this paradox idea of, because dazzle painting was invented as a camouflage. And I like this paradox idea that on one hand is something that should camouflage something, so make something more invisible, but then on the other hand it's like this very strong pattern. So I like this kind of contradiction between something being there to not see something, but then it's very strong visually. The concept behind it, I think, is about a lot of work which is about masking or camouflaging in my work. It is because I think there's a possibility that we develop a different way of dealing with art. And I'm saying dealing because it's exactly against the idea that art is only something that you look at. So if you confuse something, or if you camouflage something, or if you mask something, it doesn't mean it's not there. It's there, but it's kind of against the idea that you can only look at it. Of course, you can also look at a camouflage, but somehow it's made against the idea to being looked at. And so for me, this kind of carries the concept of art is not just only something you look at, but maybe something that you have around you and that you deal with in different ways other than just looking at it. And I think that's why I really like to use that. I think the role of an artist is to produce hiccups in people. I think it is good if people understand suddenly that what they think they understand and what they think is normal for them and what they think is the everyday, that this becomes something more alien. So if they suddenly go like, oops, something is different, then I think the role of the artist is fulfilled.